Ezekiel chapter 31. And we are down verse 10. Ezekiel chapter 31, verse 10. The first 9 verses talking about, and all of this is to remind Egypt what happened to Assyria. Okay? Remember, the Assyrian Empire, which lasted about 400 years, has been conquered, has been taken over by the Babylonian Empire, Nebuchadnezzar and his crew. But the first 9 verses all talk about how glorious and how wonderful and what mighty, if you will, the Assyrian Empire was for 400 years. And comparing the Assyrian Empire to trees by a river, and how they blossomed and grew and multiplied and had big, large branches, okay, to cover all of the people and to provide shade, all of that stuff, all of the wonderful stuff about the Assyrian Empire. Okay? And even in verse 9, I have made him fair by the multitude of his branches, so that all the trees of Eden that were in the garden of God envied him. Okay? Oh, the trees of the Assyrian Empire that were envied by the trees in the garden? What a comparison! You know, that's really, I think God is laying it on thick here. He is yeah, because the trees in the Garden of Eden would have been super glorious, okay? And Adam and Eve all messed that up. So we come down to verse 10, and now here's what happens, if you will. Just a minute, find my right place here. This is Assyria's fall. Okay? This is where, again, God is reminding the Egyptians, what happened to Assyria, Egypt, is going to happen to you because of similar circumstances here. Egypt depended on the Nile. Assyria depended on the waters of the empire. Okay? And all of that, all of that glory, all of Egypt's glory, all of the Assyrian Empire's glory, and eventually all of the Babylonian Empire's glory, okay, with the one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, the hanging gardens of Babylon, okay, all of that's going to disappear. But God is using Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian Empire to pass judgment on all those nations around Israel, and Egypt is included there, pass judgment on them, plus passing judgment and captivity on Israel. Everybody's getting hit here. Okay? A lot of people going to die during all this. But in verse 10, therefore, thus saith the Lord God, because thou hast lifted up thyself in height. Again, this analogy of the trees growing tall and big, and it is all pride. Okay? Even nations get prideful. We've got a whole bunch of nations here today that are prideful, and we have a whole bunch of leaders in our government that are prideful, lifting themselves up, and when any empire or any leader lifts themselves up, okay, in height, in pride, they're doomed for a fall. Okay? Because thou hast lifted up thyself in height, and he hath shot up his top among the thick boughs, and his heart is lifted up in his height. Okay? Because of this, I have therefore delivered him into the hand of the mighty one of the heathen. The mighty one of the heathen, Nebuchadnezzar. Okay? He's delivered the Assyrian Empire into his hand, and he, the mighty one of the heathen, shall surely deal with him, Egypt. Okay? I have driven him out for his wickedness. Okay? I have driven out the Assyrians for their wickedness, for their pride, for their, and it also boils down to heathen idolatry. Okay? All of these prideful nations, they worship somebody. Okay? And apparently over there in North Korea these days, they're worshiping Kim Jong, which one? Un, yeah. They're worshiping him. He's, he is a, I've seen a couple of these, the History Channel things, and that show, history of all of the nations and stuff like that. And one of them is how, they explain how, Kim Jong-un over there, he's God to them. He is God to their citizens.
Do they have like idols? Do you know?
Him, he's their idol. Okay. So
They actually called him God or something like
yeah,
that.
yeah,
So,
yeah. So it's kind of that's kind of stuff, and I don't even know whose it's in China. I don't know his name. And Putin over there in Russia. Yeah. And future president of the United States. I've driven him out for his wickedness. And strangers, okay, the terrible of the nation, these would be, this again, all referring to the Babylonian Empire, strangers, the terrible of the nations, have cut him off and have left him. And this also can refer to, remember, the empires, the Assyrian Empire, the Babylonian Empire, they just, assimilate into their empires all of their people. Okay? So, the Babylonian Empire has all sorts of nations that contribute to the armies and contribute to, tribute money, taxes to the empire to fund the empire. So strangers, terrible, have cut him off. The strangers, the nations that were affiliated with the Assyrian Empire, okay, left the Assyrian Empire, and went over to the Babylonian Empire. So they've cut him off and left him. Okay? Upon the mountains and in all the valleys, his branches are fallen. All, like the trees in fall, dead trees, the branches all fall off, and the trees are easily blown over by the wind, but branches are fallen, and his boughs are broken by all the rivers of the land. Okay? Now, rather than nourishing and watering the trees, okay, the rivers are now destroying the trees. Okay? Broken by all the rivers of the land, and all the people of the earth are gone down from his shadow. This, his shadow, the Assyrian Empire shadow, they've all gone down. They've all disappeared, melted into the woodwork, gone over to the enemy, and have left him. And again, this is what's going to happen with Egypt. Upon his ruin shall all the fowls of the heaven remain. Oh, the birds are still going to be around. They'll still have a home. And all the beasts of the field shall be upon his branches. Now, the beasts of the field upon his branches, well, they become branches become food, if you will, for the beasts of the field. The birds can still lodge in the branches, and the beasts, just trod down the branches and chew on them, all of that, to the end that none of all the trees by the waters exalt themselves for their height. Okay, the pride that the Assyrian Empire had, it gets cut down, and they are abased. Okay? They are taught that, hey, pride is going to get you into trouble. Neither shoot up their top among the thick boughs. There's stunted growth. No growth, stunted growth. Neither shall their trees stand up in their height, all that drink water. Okay? The water isn't going to nourish them anymore. It isn't going to be enough anymore. So all that drink, for they are all delivered unto death. Destruction, death, ruin, devastation to the nether parts of the earth, in the midst of the children of men, with them that go down to the pit. Okay? They're all banished to the pit. There a lot of death, destruction. And being heathens and not believers in the one true God, guess where the pit is? God's jail, hell. Okay? And they all go down. Thus saith the Lord God in verse 15, in the day when he went down to the grave, I caused a mourning. Mourning? Yeah, yes, there's mourning. This is to cover, the covering with sackcloth, sitting in ashes, putting ashes on your head, all of the outward signs of mourning, and the deep, the source of Assyria's prosperity, okay, was made to mourn. There were the nations around about, and the deep, if you will. I covered the deep for him, and I restrained the floods thereof. Waters dried up, and they all mourned. They all did the outward signs of mourning. This is a picture of what's happening. And the great waters were stayed. And I caused Lebanon to mourn for him. Remember, it was compared to earlier in verse 3, the Assyrian was a cedar in Lebanon. The Lebanese cedars were famous. They were majestic trees. They were part of the temple. Okay? And because, now Lebanon's cedars are diminishing, if you will, caused Lebanon to mourn for him, and all the trees of the field fainted for him. And also we can apply the trees of the field and all of this to, if you will, the leaders, the princes, the highborn, the wealthy of the nations, the people that got rich through the Assyrian Empire. Okay, they're all mourning over the loss. But they do get to trade, whether it's a trade up or down. They get to trade. Now they've got the Babylonians to deal with, and come up with now we can go by the pride of the Babylonian Empire. Okay, yeah. And remember what happened to Nebuchadnezzar in the book of Daniel? His pride, he fell. And he was, crazy man for what is it, 7 years, something like that, 7 years. Went around chewing grass like fingernails got long. He was just like a wild beast in the field, eating grass. And that's what happened with Nebuchadnezzar at the end of all of this. And of course, the Babylonian Empire gets taken over by the Persians, and then eventually the Persians get taken over by the Greeks, and then it all goes downhill from there. We get we get all these glorious, wonderful empires down to the Romans, and everything, everybody in between, everybody since. Everybody wants to rule the world, and all of them eventually die out. All of them eventually, crumble because of their pride. And all the trees have fainted for him, and all of the leaders, if you will, the princes. I made the nations to shake at the sound of his fall. Okay? Remember, Egypt was fearful when the second time Nebuchadnezzar came in to take Jerusalem. Egypt was fearful that they were next. Made the nation so that everybody was fearful. Everybody in the empire, anybody connected with all this. When I cast him down to hell with them that descend into the pit. Okay? And heathen pride is heathen pride. We get the heathens get prideful. Okay? Christians can get prideful, but the heathen idol-worshiping pride would be worse because they're cast into hell because they're not believers. Okay? That's even worse. And that's why we're out here, today, trying to witness. Pastors trying to witness so that we can prevent a lot of people from this happening to them. And all the trees of Eden, the choice and best of Lebanon, all that drink water, shall be comforted in the nether parts of the earth. Okay? There will be some comfort. The trees of Eden, okay? The best of Lebanon, and this again, this refers to the idea that the cedars of Lebanon were used to build God's holy temple, and they're comforted. Okay? They also went down into hell with him, unto them that be slain with the sword, and they that were his arm, that dwelt under his shadow in the midst of the heathen. Okay? They also, everybody ends up in. Now, I have a feeling in this case, remember, there's before hell was divided into two portions. Remember, paradise and the pit. And when we trust Jesus, now we're going up to heaven. Okay, but at one time, in the time, if you will, of the Old Testament, hell was. That's why what the thief, this day, and the thief on the cross, Jesus told him, "This day thou shalt be with me in paradise." So we've got paradise and the pit. Okay. Am I okay there? Is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. That's what. But yeah. So there are the comforted. Lazarus in the bosom of Abraham. Remember, Lazarus went. Yeah, that was the idea there also. Okay? But this is the idea here also. Okay? They that dwell under his shadow to whom art thou thus like in glory? Now, God asks a question of Egypt now. To whom art thou thus like in glory and in greatness among the trees of Eden? The Egyptian pharaohs were proclaiming themselves God and prideful and, lifting themselves up. And I compared Assyria to the trees of Eden. How about you, Egypt? How can you compare to the trees of Eden? Yet shalt thou be brought down with the trees of Eden into the nether parts of the earth. Thou shalt lie in the midst of the uncircumcised with them that be slain by the sword. Okay? You're going to hell like everybody else. This is Pharaoh and all his multitude, saith the Lord God. Okay? They're all doomed. And anybody unsaved, unbelieving, heathen, idol worshipers, we're all doomed. So, and you need to get on the right side of God. And when you're on the right side of God and trust in Him, okay, then there is His glory that will lift us up. And not our glory, but His.